The Bite of the Mango, Chapter 18. Katie paced the kitchen. Check to see if there's a message on the telephone, she said to Abu. Abu lifted the receiver. Nothing, came his gruff reply. I was seated on a chair, my back up against the wall, heart pounding. It was well past dinner time, and Bill was supposed to have picked me up by now. He called once during the day to say he would be a little late, but that was the last we'd heard of him. I watched Katie's daughter, Amy Natu, stroke her bulging stomach. She was due to give birth any day. She was sitting on the couch in the television room beside the kitchen, her feet up on a stool, fanning herself with a magazine. Maybe he's run into traffic, she called out. But rush hour's finished, Katie said, scratching her forehead. Where could he be? Check if there is a message on the telephone, she said. She asked Abu again. This went on for another hour until the telephone rang. Hello? Hello? Katie said, first in Creole and then in English. Her expression became grave as she listened, saying only a few words. Yes. Okay. Yes. She hung up the receiver slowly. Mariatu, Bill wants you to stay with us a little longer, she said, getting down on her knees and rubbing my legs. Because he doesn't like me, I said with a sigh, thinking back to my initial worries that Bill might not like me. No, Mariatu, Katie reassured me. Then she gave me the whole story. Bill had called her very early that morning, saying Comfort seemed determined to take me back to Sierra Leone for some reason, and that was why Bill had woken me up when it was still dark outside and brought me to Katie's house. Bill wants you to stay in Canada and go to school, Katie said. He hoped he could convince Comfort if he had a few hours to talk to her alone. But that didn't happen? I asked. Not yet, Katie replied. We have room so you can sleep in the basement tonight with the other girls. A smile crept onto my face at the suggestion. Saad, Hajam, and Fanta were the girls I had met at the barbecue. We'd watched music videos during the day, and we all prepared a Sierra Leonean rice dish together for dinner. Besides, Katie continued, right now you need some family and some Sierra Leonean cooking to help you get used to the strange country. 1 week stretched into 2, then 3, then 4. Bill called a few times to check up on me, but he never suggested I return. During one of their conversations, he told Katie that Comfort had gone back to Sierra Leone. I don't know if she tried to find me first. I just don't know. This part of my story is confusing even for me. Saad, Hajah, and Fanta were only a few years older than me. Each of them was related to Abu and Katie, but I couldn't keep track of exactly how. I just called them all the nieces. The war in Sierra Leone had forced the nieces to move to Freetown. All of them had met up with the rebels in some way or another, but none of them had been attacked. Another big difference between us was that they had all been in school in Sierra Leone and would be going to school here when summer turned to autumn. Everyone encouraged me to join them. School is fun, Saad said breezily. I like learning to read and hanging out with my friends. I asked the 3 girls about school in Sierra Leone. All the kids around the same age you met every morning in the schoolhouse, Fanta exclaimed. I wear a green uniform that my mom sewed, said Saad. The teacher taught us everything from how to read and talk in English to which water was safe to drink. Unlike in Canada, where school is free, families in Sierra Leone have to pay for their children's school tuition fees and uniforms. Almost all of the lessons were taught in English, Hajah told me, even though Creole, Mende, and Temne are Sierra Leone's languages. Hajah said that was because English is the universal language. Sierra Leoneans need to know how to communicate in business, she said. Don't you want to have a job one day? Of course I did. I just didn't know what I would be good at, if anything. One night, I confided in Abu, who worked for the Canadian government. that my family was depending on me to support them. I need to get an education and then a job right away, I told him. Ah, slow down, Mariatu, he winked. I supported most of my family back home too. That's what everyone in Sierra Leone expects when one of their own moves to the West. But school will take years. It's better if you do it right, graduating from high school and then university or college. If you go out and get a job too soon, it won't be a high-paying position. Only your education will get you that. How did you get your job? I asked. I went to university in Canada to study political science and economics. Do you think I'll ever be able to do that? I asked. Mariatu, you can do whatever you put your mind to, he said, taking off his glasses and looking me straight in the eyes. In North America, a lot of kids take getting an education for granted. But when you're from a poor country, you know what an education can do. It can open doors. You may not have hands, but you still have your mind. And I think you have a very sharp mind. Make the most of what you have, and you will make your way in the world. Despite Abu's words of encouragement, when Saad, Fanta, and Hajjah started getting up in the morning to go to school, I rolled over and went back to sleep. As autumn stretched into winter and great heaviness filled my heart, I spent many days staring out Katie's living room window, watching as the leaves turned yellow and then red and eventually fell to the ground. When the snow began to fall, it was nothing like I had imagined. The snowflakes were not heavy, like grains of salt, but light, like feathers that glittered in the sun. Occasionally, my eyes would trace the path of an individual flake. I imagined I was the snowflake in the big sky of so many others, and I tried to guess where I would land. I was scared to go to school. Since Hajjah, Saad, and Fanta already had some education, they'd been placed in a higher grade. I'd be alone, in a class of strangers. I dreamt of being able to read books and write, but I wondered how I would do it with no hands, with no one by my side to help me. I was afraid I would make a fool of myself. At night, I'd listen to the nieces recount their days and bemoan the homework they had to do. I'd shake my head when they asked if I wanted to go to school, too. Not yet, I'd reply. Soon, I promise. I enjoyed living with Katie and Abu, whose home was always full of Temne-speaking Sierra Leoneans. Some, like the nieces, stayed for a long time. Others stayed for just a few days or weeks, until they found their own apartments. Our evening meals were always big plates of Sierra Leonean food. We'd eat together. Before Katie and Abu ran off to look at an apartment or to fill out some immigration papers for a new Sierra Leonean arrival. After the nieces had done their homework, we'd flop ourselves down on Abu and Katie's comfortable couches and watch music videos. Some of them featured female hip-hop artists, now hip-hop I liked. All the women in the videos were black. Their music had a rhythm I could move to. My mind often floated back to Sierra Leone. I miss Muhammad's jokes. I wish it was Marie cooking in the kitchen, not Katie. I longed to feel Adamsi's warm body snuggled up beside me at night. I knew I had to get going, if not for me, then for Adamsi, who was still in Sierra Leone. But she seemed so far away, I wondered if she wouldn't be happier if I just came back to be with her. One Saturday morning, I was jolted awake by 5 girls jumping on me. Get up, lazy bones. Hajjah, Saad, and Fanta had been joined by 2 other female relatives, Yumu and Kadiatu, or KK, who had just arrived from Sierra Leone. Usually the girls were quiet in the mornings, showering in the downstairs bathroom before heading upstairs for breakfast and then to the bus to school. But that was the weekend. They had me surrounded on all sides and were poking me, playing with my hair, tickling my neck and stomach. Get up, sleepyhead, Amu said, blowing into my ear. Not yet, I growled. I pulled a pillow over my head, but Saad grabbed it and started hitting Hajjah with it. Time to get up, Fanta sang hip-hop style. Next they broke into Temne's song, and one I remembered well from my childhood. I was born a virgin, and I still am a virgin, Yumu sang. If that's what you say you are, prove it, the others chorused. It wasn't a song you would hear in the West, but it was one of our village staples. The five girls sang another Sierra Leonean classic next. My boat is somewhere in Makeni, they chanted in unison, and clapping their hands and slapping their knees to make the beat. Oh, how I wish I could be with my boat. I couldn't help but smile as I watched these young women, so bright-eyed and perky, so early in the morning. It's not early, Emil laughed when they were done singing. You sleep all the time, so you don't even know what time of day it is anymore. All the girls together pulled and pushed me into a standing position. Brush your teeth and get ready, Fanta ordered. We're going to braid your hair, and then we're going to the library. Several hours later, I sat wedged between Saad and Haja in the back seat of Katie's blue minivan. I wasn't sure what a library was, so I asked them. When you finally go to school, you'll have to use the library, Amuse said, wagging a finger at me. The library is where you borrow books to help you study and learn. But don't be late returning the books, Katie called over her shoulder from the driver's seat. Haja, the last time you took a book out, you were a month late. I had to pay a big fine. I can't wait until all of you start working, she said, making a clicking sound with her tongue. I'm planning on retiring on what you girls owe me. Of course, Auntie Katie, said Fanta, who was sitting in the front seat. We love you, she sang. Haja started playing with my hair, neatly braiding it with chestnut-colored hair pieces. You know, Mariatu, you're actually very pretty. When we can see you, Saad teased. Most of the time you're buried underneath the blankets. You don't like us? Of course I do, I smiled. No one had ever said I was pretty before. I never thought of myself that way. Good, said Fanta, turning around and grinning at me. Because on Monday, we all want you to go to school. Katie continued in a serious tone. I've enrolled you in an English as a second language course. When you graduate, you'll go on to high school with the others next September. But Auntie Katie, I started to say. No, she interrupted. I could see her dark brown eyes in the rearview mirror. Her face was solemn, her expression no nonsense. It's time to get moving, girl. I knew by now that Katie was like the mother of all the Sierra Leoneans in Toronto. Many people credited Katie and her family with saving their lives. If Katie says you have to do something, muttered Haja, you better do it, or else she will send you back to Sierra Leone. She'll drop you off at the bus stop and say, go, find your way to the airport on your own. Not something to look forward to. I shivered at the thought. It was February, cold and gray, and snowing outside. As we made our way from the parking lot into the library, I ducked my face inside the collar of my bulky purple ski jacket, one of the items of clothing the imam at the local mosque had collected for Sierra Leonean refugees. When we got inside the front doors, Katie took my arm and led me into the section of the library that said was for children. It was a sunny room with fictional characters painted on the walls, including Mickey Mouse, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, and a turtle Katie told me was named Franklin. Katie started pulling books off the shelves and piling them into my arms. The best way to learn a new language is to start at the beginning, she said. Read what the children are reading. I must have been holding about 15 books by the time she said, that's enough for now. At a small table, we sat down on some children-sized chairs. Okay, she said, picking up the top book. This is a good one. It's called Baby Sister Says No. She flipped it open. Can you read any of these words? I shook my head. Mariatu, Katie said sharply. You can do better than that. I focused on the page. This is an S, and here's a T, I said, pointing my arm at the letters. Very good, Katie said. She turned the pages of the book, explaining that the story was about a funny porcupine-like creature whose baby sister won't let him do anything he wants. Kind of like you girls living in my house, she joked. Now, she continued, picking up another book, this book is about a monkey named George. And here's The Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. I used to read this to my children when they were little. Katie was lost in thought for a moment. The Sneetches don't want to associate with their own kind because their own kind look different, kind of like how the world works. Sometimes all we see are our differences. I can only dream of the time when that's not so. She sighed as she piled the books into a stack, then smiled. When you can read these books to my granddaughter, you'll have made it. Let's go check these out. Aminatu had given birth shortly after I arrived to a baby girl named Khadija. If I didn't hurry up, the baby would catch up to my reading level. Amu's right, I thought. I need to get going.